بسم please. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. God, you're so morose. It's the Qur'an, for God's sake, smile. Okay, so we're journaling our Qur'an. You've got the introduction to journaling, you know all the bits that come with it, and you actually get stickers. You don't have to worry about drawing too much. The color directory, something that you should know, because we will at some point go back and look at the buildings and the different sections on it. There's a QR code for your past sessions. Quran City map, we will go into that at some point, maybe in the month of Ramadan. I'm not sure what's happening, or after. There's a little bit on the gates, the road network, we've talked about it. And I'm hoping you know this one now. وَالْزَمْ قَلْبِي حِفْظَ كِتَابِكَ كَمَا عَلَّمْتَنِي. It should just come naturally, like you would say, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Just really naturally, okay? So, وَالْزَمْ قَلْبِي. Qalbi is my heart, right? So, make me commit to my heart, hifdha kitabika, the internalization of this book, like you have taught me. In other words, I want to love this book. Okay. Surah Al-Fatiha, short focus. Come on. Summary of the Quran. Okay. Baqarah, history of faith. Al Imran. Come on. We've been doing it for so long now. This is the 13th week. Muslim identity. Yes, it is. Nisa, manifestation of that identity, and it starts off with respect for women. Ma'idah, perfection of faith, okay, great. An'am, practicalities of Tawheed, but you found people who made up their own rules of religion. Are you good? Last, A'raf, anybody? Have a look. Come on. A'raf, it's got your focus in there, okay? It was the consequences of those who rejected divine guidance. Okay. Now last week we started with Ankabut, and I said we would do these in preparation for the month of Ramadan. And in Ankabut, if you look at the short focus, it told you that every single statement that you make will be tested. So if I said I believe, it'll be tested. If I said I love you, it's gonna be tested. It also showed me the fragility of the human being and his ecosystem. And I mentioned COVID, that tiny little virus that we couldn't even see, kind of stopped us in our tracks. So much so that even today, people don't go back to the office. They work part-time at home and they just don't go back. 2 days a week or something like that. But it's made a difference. And at the end of the day, it's telling me that sustenance and protection only come from divinity. Okay. Today we're going to do Rum. But before that, I mentioned last week that there's a hadith of Imam Sadiq, and I'm going to tell you it verbatim. Whoever recites Ankabut and Rum, and recites, remember, was to read, internalize, understand, apply, and teach. Our children know this. So whoever does that for Ankabut and Rum on Laylatul Qadr, he says, will certainly be amongst the residents of Jannah without any exceptions. He said, وَلَا أَقُولُ inshallah. I don't even say inshallah. And he says, I do not even fear, this is Imam Sadiq, that Allah will record a sin against me for giving such a status to these 2 chapters. Now it's not rocket science that before Laylatul Qadr, I should know it so well, like Surah Yasin. Maybe I don't know it, inverted brackets, by heart. But at least every time a sentence, every time a verse is recited, I know exactly what it's trying to tell me, and I'm trying to follow it, okay? And then you can, like I told you, at 4 o'clock, the children say, halfway to Jannah when we finish Ankabut, and when we finish Rum, they actually hug each other and say, we're there. It's amazing. Okay, so we're going to look at Surah Al Rum today. Now, a little bit of background on Surah Al Rum before I come to Ayah 2. So you can look at Ayah 2. So, go back to history. You need to know a little bit of history. Now, historically, there always used to be a struggle between the Persians and the Romans. And maybe they were known as the Byzantines and the Sassanids, right? So there's always a tension up and down. One won, one lost. And it was always over this piece of land, which is a bit of Turkey, Syria, and Palestine. Sound similar? Okay, so this is Persia and Rome going up and down. Now, they were like football teams, according to the Arabs. For the Arabs, they didn't like the Romans very much later on, because the Romans converted to Christianity. And the Christians had a book, like the Muslims did, and they had believed in one God, and they believed in a prophet. So every time the Persians won, they would say, yay, our team won. Every time the Romans won, they didn't like it at all. But they dissed the Muslims because the Persians were winning. And they were up there and they were taking all that land. Now before that, the Romans were not Christians. And they conquered Jerusalem, destroyed it completely. Similar? Can you understand it? Then when they converted to Christianity, they rebuilt Jerusalem and they called it Alia. Now history is quite important. You've got a sticker there. It says Persians and Romans. Can you see that? And that goes on, and I'm told I've got to tell you where to put the stickers from back there. So the first one says Gulibatir Rum. Rome has, the Romans have been defeated. And that's where you have the sticker with the Persians on top of the Romans. So the Persians won. I mean, they were there. And remember when the Prophet wrote a letter to all the lands near him, it was the Persian king who tore up the letter, killed the messenger, and put the letter under his feet. Right? So the Arabs, if I say the Quraysh actually liked the Persians because they did not believe in the book. So you can see how things were going on. So Qulibat al-Rum, basically it's saying Rome is completely defeated. That's where you put the sticker. And then Allah is telling them, Fi atnar ar, they're so near you, and yet you are not even, as if you're not even bothered. Just like you and me. The television is so near, social media is so near, we know exactly what's happening in the rest of the world. They're saying it's so near you. وَهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ غَلَبِهِمْ سَيَغْلَبُونَ. He said, wait. Now this is 9 years before. The Persians have already won. This surah is telling the Muslims, don't worry. The Romans will win. 9 years before. It's like right now somebody telling you that Palestine will win. And you think, really? I've looked at the rubble. This is Surah Al Rum. Okay? Right. Now it's saying, Fi bid'i sinin. Can you see that? Bid'i sinin in the Arabic language means anything from 3 to 9 years. So you have a sticker there which says 3 to 9 years. So you will never forget that bid'i sinin means 3 to 9 years. It's just like you and me say in English, a couple of years. So we know it's 2 years. As soon as you hear bid'i sinin, you know it is between 3 to 9 years. Now, let's look at the last bit of this ayah. وَمِن بَعْدِ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَفْرَحُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. The believers are going to be happy. Now you're thinking, if the Romans win, why would the believers be happy? Okay, they will feel happier because they won't be dissed by the Quraysh so much. But this is a prelude to the Battle of Badr. Because Yufri al-Mu'mineen means after 9 years, not only did the Romans win, the Muslim ones in the Battle of Badr. And you have a sticker which says Badr there as well. So this is the prediction of Badr in Surah Al Rum. And it is a prediction of the Romans winning 9 years before the event happened. Now 9 years is a long time. And 9 years before, when these people are told this is going to happen, you can imagine the skepticism that was going on. Really? If I told you right now that the rubble you see in Palestine, in Gaza, is not going to be there. It's going to be a completely new era. You're going to look at me and say, are you serious? But that's why you're looking at Surah Al Rum. Are you good? Okay. If somebody tells you life is going to be okay, if it's not okay, it's not the end. That's what this surah is trying to say. Okay? All right. Are you good with that? And then it says, بِنَصْرِ اللَّهِ, with the help of Allah. يَنْصُرُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الرَّحِيمُ. He will help. Now if you just put in there a reference of surah number 8, ayah 9, I think. And this will tell you the help of Allah in Badr. I'm not going to go over it now. I don't have the time. But you can go into it and you can look at surah number 8, ayah 9. But this is literally telling you, this is the result of the victory of Badr. Okay, this is it. وَعْدَ اللَّهِ. This is Allah's promise. لَا يُخْلِفُ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ. He never fails his promises. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. But most people do not know. There is nothing in this book that he will not keep his promise for. I love surah number 14, ayah 34. You can write it down, look at it later. Where he says, وَآتَاكُمْ مَا كُلِّ سَأَلْتُمُوهُ. He will give you whatever you ask for. And you say, yeah, right. But he says here, wa'ad Allah, that is his promise. La yukhlifullahu wa'dahu. He will never backtrack on his promise. If he says, you remember Surah number 8, ayah 33 that I talked about with you? I will never punish the one who asks for forgiveness. So it's not rocket science to continually say astaghfirullah. And if in that grave they come up and say, hello, you're due for punishment, tell them, haven't you read 8:33? Are you good? All right, great. Right, 30:17. That's your next ayah, okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about 30:17. For subhanallahi, declare his perfection. Glory la, I don't understand glory. Sabbaha is to declare perfection. Sabaha is to swim when you perfectly, you're floating, right? So, for subhanallah is declare the perfection of Allah. Hina tumsuna, when you enter the time of the evening, and evening is asr and maghrib. Wahina tusbihun, and when you enter the time of the morning, which is Fajr. But there is another connotation to it as well. And the next ayah says, Walahul hamd, and praise and shukr be to him, fi samawati wal ard, wa ashiyan wa hina tudhirun, in Isha and in Zahar. And you've got a picture or sticker of somebody doing sajda, right? So it's referring to some times of salah. But it's also referring to the fact, if I go back a bit, normally in the evening, you will find people are busy. Either mothers are cooking or you've got traffic jams. In the morning you're busy taking your children to school or you've got another traffic jam. So he's saying, in those moments of being busy, glorify you, Lord, or declare his perfection. You can't do much in traffic. You just can't. You just got to sit there. Don't swear, don't get angry. Subhanallah or astaghfirullah, right? And then he says, Walahul hamd fi samawati wal ard, wa ashiyan, when most people are asleep, wa hina tudhirun, during Dhuhr they're working. So even when you're sleeping and when you're working, glorify. When you say glorify, do his hamd, which is thank him and praise him. So in other words, continually be able to see Allah in absolutely everything. Right. Now if you look at ayah 17-29, I'm not going into all of them. All of them are his signs. Basically what the surah is saying. If you are so amazed by the prediction that was going to happen in 9 years, that's not a matter of amazement. That's easy for Allah. What is amazing is the signs in front of you and that you're not looking at. And it's literally 17-29. There's 10 signs there. If you look at your building, which you have in your books, the building lists those 10 signs. I'm not going to go into them. I've gone into 30-21. Now 30-21 is normally recited in weddings. But look at the beauty of the sign, because it says, Wamin ayati, and there's 6 ayat, and will come one after the other, which says Wamin ayati, and one of his signs. And khalaqalakum min anfusikum azwajan, he has created from yourselves your spouses. They don't come from another planet. I know there's a book which says men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Okay? But they're from humanity. And he says, look, he's created them from you. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, so you find peace ilayha, in her. She's a peace giver. There was a time, maybe a year before they got married, or 2 years before, I'm married for 48 years, 49 years ago, I'd never think I'd care for a human being like that. Really? Are you serious? Some random Merali, sorry sisters here, some random person, and then God Almighty, I can't live without him. How did that happen? Somebody whom you didn't even know, and you looked and you thought, really, you're going to marry him? Sorry, I love him to bits, okay? But can you understand what he's saying? It's a sign of his. Can't you see? لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, you find peace in her. And he says, this is not at all a contract between you and him. This is not Valentine's Day. This is وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. He puts in between you selfless love and compassion. You don't. The moment you think this is me and him, forget it. It's a trilateral contract. If you don't invite Allah into this, it's a train crash. You do anything where you don't invite him, it's not going to work. So don't think I fell in love, which means you fell and it's going to go away. Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I disillusioned you lot, okay? No, okay. So you need him. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And if we only took this sign, in it there is a sign for people who think. Just think for a minute. I don't know how many years you've been married or not or whatever, but just think. This person whom you don't even know, suddenly he becomes the major part of your life. Or she becomes a major part. How did that happen? How did this random person become something, it's mind-boggling. Okay, so if you look at 21, you've got وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ, 20, you've got وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ, and it goes down to 25, you've got وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ. I'm not going into each and every one. I like to go to 30. Absolutely love this ayah. Okay, and you can stick a little heart there. Are you all right, Yasmin? Little heart. Okay. فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا. Now, you got to look at the subtlety of these ayat. Okay, he says, so stand, put your face towards that. Deen is like a dain, it's a debt. It's what you exchange for your life. So your path, your mission statement, what you have called yourself as, make it Hanifa. Hanif is somebody who is focused, totally focused. Upright means focused. So he says, focus on your mission statement. If somebody were to ask you at random, who are you? I would probably say, I am a Muslim, a Shia Ithna Ashri Muslim, Khoja, mother of 5 and grandmother of 9. Now if I make that statement, then I have to be totally committed to that statement. You make your own statements, up to you. So he says, فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا. Now he says, فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسِ عَلَيْهَا. Nowhere does he put his name to something. He says, فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ, which means your inside, every human being's heart has been programmed, it's been pre-programmed with the program of Allah, which is the 99 names. That is why the moment I say Rahman or Rahim or Malik or Quddus, you recognize it in there. You're pre-programmed. Now, pre-program is okay, but you need to unlock the program. Software has keys, you know that? You either buy them, you subscribe to them. Here, the software key is free. It's a divine revelation. It is what came down. So he says, you're pre-programmed. فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسِ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ لِخَلْقِ اللَّهِ ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. You cannot change that pre-programming. You just can't. And he says, most people don't know that. When you hear about Karbala, this classical example, and you hear about Imam Hussein going with Ali al-Asghar, and he stands in front of the army of Yazid, and he says, I don't want any water. Feed this child some water. And they look at him. And then he says, okay, if you think I'm going to drink the water, you hate me, right? I'm going to put this child on the hot sand of Karbala. It was then that even those people who didn't have hearts, there was a little bit of commotion. And they went towards the Furat to get water for the child. It's pre-programmed. We've got it in us. If somebody came to you and you hated their guts, but they said, please, something little for me, you can't give it. He's going to. A little bit of water. You're going to do that, okay? So he says you're pre-programmed. Now, that was singular. I go back. فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا. Now look at it. مُنِيبِينَ إِلَيْهِ. Now, let's go back to the word munibin so we know what is happening here. Munibina is a plural, and it actually means turning to someone spiritually. Turning together to someone spiritually. Munibina also says turning towards someone in tawbah or asking for forgiveness. He says if you want to unlock this software license, you will have to do it together. Munibina ilay. On your own, you're going to get really fed up. Come together. Munibina ilay wattaquhu. Be careful or be God conscious. Wa aqimu salah. Establish salah. Wa la takunu min al mushrikeen. And don't be of those who do shirk or associate with Allah. It always helps when you do things together. If we're sitting here together, it's much easier to learn Qur'an than to sit separately. Many people say, I'll do it online, but can you imagine sitting online? I mean, yeah, okay, good. I'm very happy for you. Okay. So turn to him with salah, with Qur'an, with M14. It makes a difference. Have you watched a majalis online? I have. You sit on a sofa, there's some tea, there's some snacks, you forward it a bit more. You might not do that, I do that, okay? So, and then you think, I don't like this one. You go to another Jamaat, and you go to another. And that essence of the Farsh of Hussein is not there. That's why he says, Munibina, do it together. And one will raise the other up. Okay. 33. Okay, and this you've got dua hands, by the way. So 33 is a continuation, literally, of Ankabut. Do you remember in Ankabut we said they only turn to Allah in emergency times, and as soon as the emergency is over, they say, "Khalas, I don't want to know." Right? So here it's a little bit similar to what they said over there. So he's saying, وَإِذَا مَسَّ النَّاسُ ضُرٌّ, when a human being is afflicted to harm, دَعَوْا رَبَّهُمْ, they call upon their Rabb. Now, again, munibina ilay. They go to everyone and say, please do dua for me. I'm really stuck. Help me. Right? ثُمَّ إِذَا أَذَاكَهُمْ مِنْهُ رَحْمَةً. But the moment we give them a bit of mercy, إِذَا فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ بِرَبِّهِمْ يُشْرِكُونَ, they forget. They say, this was me. My thinking and the AA helped me and whatever helped me, and they forget all the bits about the dua. وَإِذَا أَذَقْنَا النَّاسَ رَحْمَةً, and when we give people a little bit of rahmah, oh, they're so happy. فَرِحُوا بِهَا. In Swahili they say furaha. Okay, you remember that? They're so happy. وَإِن تُصِبْهُمْ سَيِّئَةٌ, and then suddenly, now look what it says here. وَإِن تُصِبْهُمْ سَيِّئَةٌ بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ. He doesn't say, I touch them with evil. He say, I touch them with rahmah. But the evil is a consequence of their own actions. When they suffer the consequence of their own actions, إِذَا هُمْ يَقْنَتُونَ, they absolutely despair. They're depressed. Yaqnatun, I can't say despair. Yaqnatun is actually qunut, which means they're absolutely despairing. They're in depression, right? How did this happen to me? And yet, anything that touches me is a concept. Look, not death. Death is a rahmah from. That's why you call somebody marhum. You know that? They're encompassed in his mercy. Illness can be a test. But if I did not brush my teeth for a month, and then my teeth start hurting, that's literally a consequence of my actions. And I know where I've gone wrong. So this is where he's saying, if it's a consequence of your actions, then you suddenly say, this God has brought upon me. He hasn't. Are you good? Okay. Right, 37. I love this one. Okay, now he says, أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا, do you not see? أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ, that Allah extends your rizq, وَيَقْدِرُ, and He makes it a little bit less. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يُؤْمِنُونَ. In this there is a sign for people who believe. Now we'll come to this in a minute, but I'd like to talk about Razak. Razak is number 17 of Asma al-Husna. And because we did Asma al-Husna just before, I said we're pre-programmed. What I say is gonna be inside us, right? So rizq is not just pound signs, and rizq is not just food. Rizq denotes everything that is good and useful to the human being. Love is rizq. There's emotional rizq, there's spiritual rizq, there's physical rizq, and there's mental rizq. All of it is rizq. So when you're asking for rizq, you're asking Ya Razak, or you're asking the one who's Razak. But Razak doesn't mean just give and give and give. It's like a parent-child relationship. I might want to give my child absolutely everything, all the love and the care that I have. In fact, if my child needed my life, I would put my hands up and say, Ya Allah, give them my life, but take mine away. That's what children do to you, right? However, I will still teach my child to be independent. For me, that's part of rizq. To teach them how to walk, to teach them how to talk, to teach them how to do their own things. Not because I don't want to do it for them, but because that's part of rizq. So when you and I ask Allah for rizq, it doesn't just come just like that. You have to work for it. He makes you work for it. If I ask Him for patience, He will put me into a situation where I will have to exercise that patience. Are you getting what I'm trying to say? What rizq is? And the greater the test He puts me through, the greater He thinks I am. Yes? The greater my level. If I ask my daughter to cook for 40 people who are coming home, that means I got a lot of confidence in her. If I asked her just to cook for us, there'll probably be pizza in the oven from the freezer, okay? All right, so that's razaq. Now what do I do with this rizq that He gives me? He says, if you want this rizq, if you want to grow, like that child that I want to walk, talk, come out of nappies, so on and so forth, فَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى. The first thing is share with those who are near you. Not only your family members first, the extended family, your community, your friends, they're all ذَا الْقُرْبَى. Give them their, and it doesn't say share, it says give them their right. حَقَّهُ. You can't have a beautiful mansion and waste food when somebody you know doesn't. Whether it's your neighbor or your friend or your community member or whatever, right? Then he says, wal miskin. And I'll just explain miskin a bit. I wrote it down a bit. Makasa is to stop, and sakana is to stay there. A miskin, there's a difference between a miskin and a fakir, right? So you have two. You have fakir and miskin. Both are in need. I'm going to, if I can just go over some of these words so we understand them. A miskin is somebody who is stuck in his situation. So he can't move, whether it's a financial situation or whatever situation it is. He's stuck. A fakir has greater needs, by the way. A fakir is somebody who has greater needs, and he can actually ask for help. He will go about and he will ask for help. A miskin will never ask for help. But he's stuck in this financial quagmire or whatever problem he's in. So Allah is saying the first person you do is miskin. They will not ask. You need to recognize them. You need to see what's happening. I tell this story many times. I may have told it to you before. But I used to teach in the annex, boys, 30 odd years ago, maybe 35 odd years ago. And I remember sitting there with these boys, and we used to sit there for Muharram, Safar and Ramadhan. And we talked about Sayyidah Sakina in Safar, and we talked about orphans and how to help orphans. And orphans don't have a badge on them that says, I am an orphan. It doesn't say anything like that. And I cannot forget this little boy. He's grown up now, he's got children of his own, he's phenomenal. But at that time he was very tiny and he'd lost his father. And he stood up and he said, you know what I miss? My mama plays football with us in the garden. But I miss my baba because there's nobody to take me to football. Nobody to play football with us. Mama tries really hard. And everybody who was there had tears in their eyes because they never knew that all they had to do was go to him, pick him up and take him to football. That's all he wanted. That's how he missed his dad. You and I have to look around and see, are there any children who need to be taken to football, for example? Their mama tries as much as she can. You seen a mama try to put a goal? Oh, she's useless. And it's not the same. Boys with boys. So this is what it's saying. That's what a miskin is, okay? Wabna sabil. Wabna sabil is somebody who is traveling. Could be a refugee. But when you are traveling, you're not home. So you need help. If somebody's come from abroad, give them a little bit more help. It doesn't matter if they're millionaires or billionaires in their country. But when they come to yours, it's hard. It's not easy. Have you been to an imambara that you've never been to? Oh goodness, have you tried to walk into Stanmore if you've never been to Stanmore? God Almighty. I have, believe me, used to live in Chelmsford. I was telling the kids the other day, the first time we came was in Ramadan, little children. And we sat on these sufras in the annex, right? And everybody brought dabbas. Do you remember dabbas? Everybody brought dabbas. And the person next to me passed the dabba behind me to the other person. I didn't want her food. But it hurt. I didn't know you had to bring dabbas to the mosque. I thought you just had what was there. Wish I'd known. Anyway, you learn as you go along. So wabna sabil can be anybody. It could be a queen in your land, but that's what it means. He's saying, this is what you do with your rizq. ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ. And that is better for those who wish to have Allah's pleasure. It's not difficult. It's not rocket science. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. You want success? This is what success is. Success is not anything else but this. It's sharing. It's looking around. It's looking for signs. That's why Salatul Jama'ah is better than Furada. Okay? Right, 57. I'm going to finish this determined to. I know I'm going to get looks, but hey, 57. Okay? Now 57 is on your last page, and you've got a sticker which says, no excuses. فَيَوْمَئِذٍ, on that day, لَا يَنْفَعُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا مَعْذِرَتُهُم. Ma'adhira is justification, rationalization. But you know, God, it was just so difficult for me. I'm sorry, no excuses. My mama didn't teach me. That's why I can't read Quran. She told me Zwad instead of Dad. And it's all her fault. Not my fault at all. Yeah. They didn't let me study. Oh, didn't you hear of Open University? No, I didn't. She didn't let me do this. No excuse. وَلَا هُمْ يُسْتَعْتَبُونَ. Now, يُسْتَعْتَبُونَ is a word which means he will not remove their exhaustion. Which, here it says they'll be regarded. It means removal of exhaustion. Their exhaustion will not be removed. They can have excuse upon excuse upon excuse. Sorry, it's not going to work. It's all down to you, how you take it, okay? So responsibility is put on the human being. Right, 58. وَلَقَدْ ضَرَبْنَا لِلنَّاسِ فِي هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ مِنْ كُلِّ مَثَلٍ. In this Qur'an, and you've got a sticker of a Qur'an, you have absolutely every single example in here. You can see a reflection of yourself. وَلَئِنْ جِئْتَهُمْ بِآيَةٍ لَيَقُولَنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا إِنْ أَنْتُمْ لَا مُبْطِلُونَ. Now what happened was, those who covered up the truth, when they looked at it, they said, oh my goodness, in antum la mubtilun. You know what? This is false. It's not us. Every time the human being is faced with the truth, he doesn't like it, or she doesn't like it, and they didn't like it because the Quran explained to them exactly who they were. And finally, the last one. كَذَلِكَ يَطْبَعُ اللَّهُ عَلَى قُلُوبِ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Not the last one, by the way, that's 51. And this is how Allah sets a seal on the hearts of those. Basically, when you cover up the truth about yourself. Finally, the last one, fasbir. It says, have patience. And sabr is doing your best and then handing it over to Allah. So it says, to the Prophet and to you and me, do your best. Inna wa'dallahi. Again, the promise of Allah will always be true. وَلَا يَسْتَخِفَّنَّكَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُوقِنُونَ. By the way, khiffa means lightness. Don't underestimate yourself, ever. Don't ever get rid of your self-confidence in the thing that don't allow those who don't have conviction to undermine or underestimate your strength. The tactic of any oppressor is to undermine your strength. Any oppressor. I was talking to somebody who works at Bernardo's, 2 minutes, and I had lunch with her yesterday, and she said what she found on most people who oppressed, whether it was parents, it was in-laws, whether it was a husband, whether it was family members, whether it was friends. What they did was they put the child or whoever the person was so down, like really got at them every day. You're this, you're this, you're this, you're this, until that person felt like they were worthless. And then they made themselves as the person who was the only person this person could go to. So in other words, the oppressor always makes you feel that's the only person you need and nobody else, right? And this is exactly what it's saying. The Quraysh just battered the Prophet again and again and again. And immediately Allah says, don't let them do that. You and me will be battered by 100,000 people who will say 100,000 things. But don't lose your self-confidence in the fact that inna wa'adallahi haq. He is there for you. He's not going to go anywhere. He's there with you. Are you good with that? It's such an amazing surah. Yeah. So 29 and 30 take you to Jannah on Laylatul Qadr. Next week, there is no class because you've got Laylatul Bara'ah. I will put on the WhatsApp group, because you're reading Surah Yasin 3 times. So I'll try and put the whole Surah Yasin spleen down to you so you can read it. Surah Yasin is not for the dead, by the way. You know that? It's for the living. It's a surah of Hajat. I'll put that down as well. I'll put everything down so you can read it. And it's a good surah to be reciting. And inshallah, dua kumail as well. Please remember me in your du'as. Inshallah, you'll be in mine. And I'll see you afterwards, the week after, with Surah Al-Dukhan. And then the last week with Surah Al-Qadr. And hopefully Yasmin will come back to us about the month of Ramadan. Okay? Can we have a salawat? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil faraj. Let's recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Malik Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صدق الله العظيم. I've been asked that you want to recite لي خمسة, so do it once with me. لي خمسة أطفي بها حر الوباء الحاتمة المصطفى والمرتضى وأبناهما والفاطمة.